This is Julia's.
This meeting is being recorded.
Yeah, that wasn't me. Apologies.
You go. I'll shut up.
But yeah, no. About the background. Yeah, so let's talk about because we met at had to meet there in a way, but your gig. So we had your gig with Column 258 at the Beacon. And I think Column 258 is a very interesting band, very interesting concept. So I think, oh yeah, I'm getting an echo, don't know why. Anyway, so tell me about Column 258. I don't need to pose a question.
Yeah, I guess I moved, as most of us have done, did the London to Hastings thing, and I struggled to get a band off the ground in London. And previous to that, I was living in Brighton, and that was an easy place to get a band together because everyone that walks past you in the street has got a guitar on their back. So I formed a band called the Sumerian Kyngs in Brighton. Just a very quick insert on that because it's quite interesting. So I was in what appeared to be like, it looked like a Duke of Wellington's hat. It was very velvety, and it was a bar called the Marlborough. And it was upstairs, and they had live music. And I remember seeing this amazing jam by ex-members of Gong and Hawkwind and people like that. And I decided that night that I wanted to play there, but also that I wanted my band to play there, but I didn't have a band. So I went up to the promoter at the end of the evening and I said, my band must play here. We want to play here. And he said, well, what are you called? And because I didn't have a band, I didn't have a name. So out of nowhere came this name, the Sumerian Kyngs. And he was very taken with it. I said, wow, yeah, great, okay. We'll book you for 2 weeks from the date then. So I had to then run around like a madman. I recruited about 3 people that night from the room. I remember driving my car into another car just to stop this drummer that I recognized. And he was quite irate at first because obviously I sort of spun him off the road a bit, only gently. But I asked him if he would drum, and he said, yeah, man, I'll do that in 2 weeks. And so we had one rehearsal, and we had songs like Black Sun, which are with references to sort of Mesopotamia and like the whole Sumerian sort of myth. And that was a lot of fun. Anyway, jumping ahead from that. So I'd had that for 5 years. The Sumerian Kings ran for 5 years, and they're still going without me. And then London was just a dry pot. You couldn't get things galvanized. You couldn't get people together. Moving here and the wonders of this thing called Creative Hastings, which is this thing you can put posts up of things that you need. So I just posted out that I was looking to start a band, that it wasn't your regular band, that I wanted to bring original-minded people together to create sound, and with a sort of almost like a painting with sound kind of premise. Anyway, I had about 20 replies. I kind of had these little secret interviews at different coffee shops, and everybody without fail was amazing and just like a genius unto themselves. And it was very difficult to kind of whittle it down, which I did. And various people have been in the band, dropped in and dropped out at various points. Amazing local musicians like Cold and Dry Stone, Keith Rodway, Necessary Animals have dropped in there, have dropped out. Nick Weeks has always been a mainstay. And some of the people on my street, just Holly and you know, Andy Cooper. But it just came together really quickly and really effortlessly. And we started playing together in what I refer to as the old tyre factory, which is actually, it was sort of halfway down these broken steps in the back of a garage. And it was just really tiny little cupboard. And I remember Colden setting up a drum kit in basically, this sort of tiny box in the corner. And then we just started making, it was very, in those days, it was very sort of noise generating kind of thing, quite close to the Velvet Underground, I guess, which is, you know, I grew up, one of the first records I sneaked home with, just took time off school, and you'd get back home with these LPs under your arm from various sources. I remember White Light, White Heat by the Underground, which blew me away for several reasons. Just the raw intensity of it, and it kind of set a benchmark for something I've always been looking for, that authenticity of sound and that kind of free sense of musical direction, and the poetry, of course, a lot of poetry in Lou Reed's music, a lot of lyricism. He almost became, as he evolved, like a famous sort of American songbook kind of author of that kind of sound, and coming from a really sort of John Cagean abstract noise space. But the column is very sturdy at the moment. It went through a phase of I think crumbling, and I think we managed to rescue it. So
yeah, well, I can imagine
Yeah.
from having seen it that it's got that quality that it can remake itself, because some bands almost can't. Like, I couldn't do my band, the Montague Armstrong, without Matt Armstrong. It's very much us two, and you couldn't re-put it together. It would become something completely different. But column 258 seems to be flexible enough that it can, unlike a crumbly column, it can bend a little bit more like a like a Zen bamboo conceit.
Yeah.
Yes.
Maybe our song Boomerang Bones is actually quite apt then, for that very reason. But yeah, I think there's a DNA within column 258 which is sort of really rooted and strong, and it allows people to come in and out. And I've always been of the mind of have an open door policy to the band, so that if I might meet someone on the street that plays the accordion, and my immediate thoughts are, let's get that person in, and sometimes that disrupts obviously the dynamic, but I like that to me is the way forward, that level of disruption. So you never have a situation of status quo within the sound. There's always something which is kind of edgy and moving towards in balance.
Yeah, and I love the way the songs are also a little fluid. They are not set, but they seem to, this is my impression as somebody who's seen it, they seem to have an identity. So they are, like, you can tell this is a different song to the last song. Doesn't all sound the same, but they have this they have a difference, but they're also flexible, a bit like my friend who I was sitting next to, your friend Steve from he's from the Kyngs, isn't he? He was saying, I thought it was rather good. He said, like a polite version of The Fall, which perhaps it doesn't sound perhaps as good as it is, but we were saying it quite excitedly because there's that repeated, maybe a repeated riff or a theme or a collection of notes or harmony or a sense of atmosphere in a track that everybody gets hold of in their own way and moves along. But it's not so much like a song in sense of, okay, we've got the verses go like this, and now we're coming up to the bridge, we will change our structure now, and everybody knows all where the chords are, and then we're off to the chorus and this builds up and then we're all together. It doesn't have that kind of thing, or that kind of very over rehearsed thing where everybody which is really wonderful when people pull it off, but you jump in all together and you get that thrill. Oh, the band stopped there and then they went there all together, and oh, it's very exciting. It's more so maybe a polite version of The Fall doesn't sum it up, but it is kind of free flowing, but it is kind of a river like. You've got your your atmospheres and your your different sense of atmosphere for each song.
Yeah, I like that. The sense of atmosphere, I think, is really important. I think that's what I got from school when I was listening to Velvet Underground or Pink Floyd, the conjuring up of a sense of atmosphere. But the other thing that I got from both the Floyd and the Velvets was this was the storytelling, or the sort of the narratives that can exist within music. And I mean, listening to like Lady Godiva. Godiva's present, is it? White Light, White Heat, where it is this whole story, where she's in a box, and you're drawn into the story. So I mean, something like Johnny Cash, there's a real pull in with that story, and it's a very interesting story. And it relates to everything that John Cash is, which is very sort of complex anyway. But the sense of when I originally started the Sumerian Kings, the idea was actually it was to have a musical backdrop for my poetry. So I was at the front doing spoken word, and my words, which were very important to me, and to have these washes of colour in the background, which would be provided by the musicians. There was no definition to what they would do. It was basically free jazz in a way. But what happened with that band, and sort of led forward with my musical involvement, was that we reached a point where they got louder and louder, and then I actually had to become a more of a Tom Waitian, Captain Beefheart figure to project my voice over this absolute field of noise. And now I quite liked that for a while. I left the band when I felt I needed to get more back to the bare bones of what I was really about, and some of the column 258 manages to, I think, straddle the noise with you can see the bare canvas more, which you couldn't with the King. It got to the point with the Kings, it was just like, every inch was covered with colour. Whereas with column 258, we're all keenly aware of seeing that kind of Miles Davis, like Kind of Blue, where you have this space and this articulation of space, which is very important, like good graphic design.
Yeah, I think it's I go along with that. I mean, I think the reference of gong is certainly from when I saw the Kings, when we were on the bill at the old coach house there at Jane's place. Is an incredible little venture that she's put into place there for everybody. I mean, she's always doing really interesting, good sort of active things, and she got this great little alternative venue totally through her putting it getting it together. And so I saw you guys there, and I really things like gong would immediately sprung to mind when I saw you, and it had more of a festival vibe. This is perhaps, as you say, more of a New York kind of interior vibe, a little bit more intense than that sort of overspill, the type of exuberance that the Kings had. This is seems somehow just a little bit more tense, intense, sort of interior New York kind of vibe. From the I only have two experiences as an audience member or as a co-performer to draw on, and that was my take home.
It's fairly anarchic. So I think that, which appeals to me. I think with column 258, it's really I mean, a lot of that type of music can be very serious. Some of the krautrock scene, it gets a bit navel gazing kind of, and a bit sort of erudite. And I think we always try and inject it with some fun, and almost like circus humor. I mean, I come from a performance background, and it's almost what I really love about something like Waiting for Godot is you have this tragic elements, but you also have this black humor, and how Beckett manages to kind of balance the tragic with this overblown ridiculous humor. There's always like English sort of Monty Python thing going on, with a really serious, almost like Aristophanes, kind of like really heavy sort of dialogue, through.
There's a nice combination. I think people are very scared of this place where clowning theatre seriousness fuses, especially if people have I too come from an improvising background, so I used to do this thing where I wrote as news stories, so I would improvise with those, and I found it easy for me to do in a way, but difficult for the audience to feel comfortable with. And sometimes it's nice when they feel uncomfortable with it, but in the end, I felt like I didn't want to test them again too much. It sort of had got a bit too, yeah, it's difficult because you're managing, then you have to sort of slightly manage people a bit more. And I don't really like managing people. I like to be more free, but I felt like thinking there's just too much potential in this day of political correctness and people making serious judgments about places where humor meets real life tragedy. And so I ended up getting more of a comic version. It just became more comic-y and more about animals and stories, because it felt a little safer for the audience. And so I just stopped doing that after a while. But I recognize this of what you say. I love to put clowning in with serious issues because I think it's part of life. But
yeah.
And it's a way of communication that actually is very not therapeutic, but I think it's good for the mind to be able to make associations and play with stuff and not be too nailed down, but with good intent. But it is hard for an audience to get, especially without a theatre background where they can go, okay, this is theatre, so we know that we're not making a mistake. Well, I'm not making an ethical mistake or something.
I guess it's that, for me, it's like from the performance side of it, it's that unexpected thing. I love the, watching magicians and pulling you pull a rabbit out of a hat thing. So, I was sort of looking to do that in music, really. So you never really know what is going to happen next with Column 258. So, and I mean, it started off, it was really just my songs, and I'm sort of opening it up now, and it feels great because it's like Holly will sing. She sings a song about a staff room, which is all the overheard conversations and all the banalities that she heard within the staff room, and then that she brought that one in, and then Andy brought another song in. He also does a song of mine, and he's in a very unique way, not how I would do it at all. And the three vocalists, myself, Andy Cooper, and Holly Finch, completely different vocal tonal palettes, and we come to a song in completely different ways. And what I love is that gives every song a really different feel and fiber, and that I find exciting. That we're not
I think
the same.
it's nice too. I like that as an audience member. Actually, I enjoyed that because it makes it feel more like a collective, which is a nice thing to feel from a band rather than this the band as the presented rehearsals. I like a collective type of it feels good because music's sort of about community. It's about people behaving together. It's not just about the music as something to listen to or an act to be performed. It's about, I think part of it can be about that sense of this is a group, we are people performing and acting together as a group, and there's something very wholesome or attractive, I can't think what it is, pleasing, can't think of a really good word, but something we respond to very in a positive way, or I do, when there's a sense that the band is a collective and it isn't hierarchy, just plain and simple.
I mean, as it grows, it's becoming more egalitarian, I guess, and I love that about it. I love the collective cooperative aspect of it, the fact that also the door is always open to people that want to come in and try things out. So we've had some amazing people come in and just do like the odd song with us or sit in with a song, and it's been super fun. So I mean, it's about things not being static, really, and about always pushing in different directions and exploring new ideas. So that's really important, but it's also about sharing the ideas within the unit, that they're not all coming from me, and they're coming from everyone is inputting constantly. I'm putting in some oregano over there, or just a pan frying something over there. Which I think music is, make that analogy. It's not like whimsical. I think cooking and music is the same thing, really, and painting, and I
people doing stuff, isn't it? And following artistic or following directions, following threads, pulling them together. Let's talk about Off the Radar now, because which is the new venture that you're cooking up. The Beacon again, which is such an interesting space. And just to describe it quickly, it's kind of like a converted house, or it feels like in that room there's a big room which is like a sort of community hall space, but it's in a domestic house, a really atmospheric one, and beautiful flowers, beautiful gardening up on West Hill. And at the back there's a whole bunch of sheds or cabins. It feels a little bit like a holiday park with fire pits, and so you can use it outside, you can use the outside space. And it feels like a sort of magical type of community land for people to play in.
Yeah, it feels like you going to visit your auntie in the countryside. I mean, and your auntie doesn't get interior design magazines and doesn't really give a fuck about any of that. And I love that about the Beacon. You know, it's not been made over. It's not like everything got painted grey, and it hasn't got like themes or like stylistic. It's just what it is. It's totally an honest representation of an ethos, which is basically, again, very supporting the collective, and the way Judy runs it is like almost like a commune, really, but the door again is always open. I love the fact that it's not, doesn't try, it just is, and that you go up there and it's like you step into a different world, and the vibe is just beautiful. And so sometimes when I'm out and I see somewhere, I see the potential of it. And it could be, I just was up there and I was looking around and I thought, wow. And it just coincided with, I had a conversation with Judy about the band playing there, first of all. And really the timing was just right, because rolling out of the pandemic, and Judy hadn't got any events booked in, and she wanted to get some events booked in. And then that led to the conversation about Off Radar, which is this night I'm starting. This is the last Thursday of every month at the Beacon, called Off Radar. And it's a model. It's not new. I used to run this thing from my house every spring. My birthday, it was like my birthday party, but no one actually knew it was my birthday, but that's what it was. That's when it happened. And it would be about inviting poets and novelists and musicians round, and people would get up and do things, and some people would just jam together and collaborate, and it was wonderful, and everybody was like, wow, this is amazing, I want to come into the next one. It kind of created a real thing, and so we ran it for about 4 years, and it got to the point where I thought I need to port this to some larger space. It's sort of outgrown my home, and I need to sort of move it somewhere. And so when I was at the Beacon, I thought this is the ideal platform to take that idea. So, but the idea is really, everyone has about 15 minutes to do whatever they want. I do curate it, so it's not like it's not like an open mic night. And the other thing about Off Radar, obviously the Beacon is geographically off radar, off grid, if you like. I like that about it. I think that it's a bit difficult to get to. I like that about it. I like the fact that it doesn't, it's not in George Street, and it's something other. And the thing about it being something other, it is also what I want to offer and present. I want to put on acts which have the something other quality, so that they're not the kind of acts that you would generally see around Hastings. So it's a real treasure trove of innovative, interesting people doing really interesting things that perhaps wouldn't get a platform anywhere else or in a pub. And again, supporting young people, young dancers that don't know where to do their stuff. Where do you, as a solo young performer, whether it's where can you strut your stuff? Where can you be given freedom to explore an idea? So that's what it's about, really, and it's going to happen, and it's starting on the 28th of July, and I'm really excited about it. Do you remember Mousetrap, the game Mousetrap?
I do vaguely. I don't remember playing a plastic mice in a basket or something. And
Yes, yeah. So it had a big impression on in the way I kind of like to create performance, so that one thing, triggers another thing, and then this thing happens over there. But the things themselves are quite distinctly different, but they have trigger points from the thing that came before it. So the idea of a dancer emerging from an upstairs window, and then suddenly there's some music starting behind the tree in the garden, and then when that comes to a close, there's a novelist strolls into the space, and so it's like unfolding theatre, but no one actually knows what's going to happen next. So there's going to be no pre-program notes or a bill of what's happening. You're going to turn up, and it's going to be a lucky dip, really. But there's going to be enough in there to kind of, everyone is going to be, it's super.
I like that very much. Yeah, I think it's very good to have a free-flowing type of program where people get to express and do their own development work, but it has this loose, theatrical, unexpected type of presentation, a loose narrative, but not a narrative in terms of people are playing roles. They're playing their own roles. It's just they're happening where they're happening in an order, so they're linked, but only by space, really, and by the place and the space and the event, they're linked, rather than an enforced narrative.
But also the audience get their whole box of milk tray as well, so that all these different things are happening, all these different flavors and ideas are coming out. And I guess it's like early cabaret or something, where almost like Victorian music hall, or when you would have these different, a comedian would come on the stage, maybe like a burlesque dancer would follow that, and then maybe someone would strum a banjo, and
like a variety of acts, but because they're placed in different in a very interesting space with an outdoor as well as an indoor space. It's not quite like the MC thing on music hall. It's not like, ladies and gentlemen, have you heard that? And now so and so. It doesn't have, which I think is really nice. It's taking the central figure out of it, because you could easily stroll around and be the MC and lead the audience about, but you choosing not to do that. You're going to let the audience meander.
That's right. Originally I was going to MC. I was looking for Birdland. They had this Pee-wee. I think it was Pee-wee Ellis, who had a tiny little voice. It introduced you to this really, it almost like being sucking a load of helium. He had this really high-pitched voice, and he was very, very diminutive, like 4 foot something. So he was a real kind of freakish character that would introduce. He was like the voice of Birdland, and that whole kind of bebop scene. And so originally I thought, we need someone like that, or I can do that. And then I thought, actually, step away from it. And that's where the mousetrap thing comes in, because one thing just automatically triggers the next thing. So you don't need someone to keep popping up and saying, oh. And I also like the fact that as soon as you do that, you give, even without meaning to, you can give things hierarchy, or you can give things presence or attention beyond what it needs. The thing is that let it breathe, let it do its thing, and don't introduce it, and don't plant a load of adjectives. Don't do like a Jules Holland thing on it, where you plant a load of adjectives about this thing that's now going to come up. You don't have to. You don't have it refracted through someone else's opinion of what it is. You just have it. Here it is.
It's raw, more raw. Yeah, I like that. I like not to be too pointed. I think it's a great sadness about a lot of art, about a lot of visual art, that it's become subject to the explainer, or the curating, the over curated, in the sense of over interventionist curating, that has become like considered an art form in itself. It's difficult for things to breathe inside that, as you say, inside that jacket. So that's coming up, and hasn't happened yet, so it'll be very interesting to see. Anyway, I expect one will not know, and everyone will be different with these. This is all in Hastings, of course, and you've had your career through Brighton, London, Hastings, that we've been talking about. But I was reflecting on yeah, well, I suppose you had your German music influences, and particularly was interested in your bringing this American sensibility in different ways, or American artists who you just happen to have had. I mean, American music's had a huge influence on our generation anyway. But yeah, we've talked a bit about that, the Velvet Underground in particular, and that New York sensibility. I wondered if you had anything more to say about yeah, any of the American artists and their approach.
Right. Well, there's yeah. I mean, it's interesting actually when you picked up that reference, because it's not one that particularly resonates with me. There are, you know, one of my favorite all-time albums is the Nirvana Unplugged in New York. You know, it's interesting though, Nirvana, that's very interesting, because one of my favorite songs off that is Penny Royalty, which is almost more English than Syd Barrett could have made it.
Yeah, true.
There's, you know, which is a beautiful arranged song, and I love that about Nirvana, actually, just jumping to that. I mean, that they can do this really raw, visceral grunge punk, and then they can go into a song like, I don't know, Penny Royalty, or do that beautiful acoustic version of The Man Who Sold the World.
Yeah, and I've always thought Cobain and everything was that he had this, it seems to be a bit of an Anglophile, like he has been influenced by listening to the songs that yeah, in the rock pop tradition that have come out of UKs, because yeah.
Well, a lot of his influences actually are really interesting, because they're very soft English folk bands, often female-led, that are really not the kind of stuff he was doing. But that's what I find interesting about influences, because your influences, you know, you don't have to be, you could sound a certain way, but your influence could be completely different. And it's what you pick up within that set of influences, within that influence. I mean, I grew up listening to things like Ricky Lee Jones, but you'd be hard pressed to really find, you wouldn't, if you came to a Column 258 concert, you wouldn't really go, oh, that sounds like Ricky Lee Jones. But I love the way she phrases stuff and the melodic elements of what she does. Wayne Krantz is someone I discovered on a mountainside in Brecon. I used to go to the Brecon Jazz Festival every year. It's an amazing little blues jazz festival, and it's a bit like the thing with what we're talking about with the Beacon and Hastings. It's this beautiful setting, and I used to basically get up at dawn and just skateboard around Brecon. And it's one of my most joyous memories, actually, of going back in time. But it was a stormy night, and up at the castle, they had all the doors open, and Wayne Krantz, who used to play for Steely Dan, I mean, what he was doing subsequently to Steely Dan is like completely different. He was a really off the wall guitar player, and he was in a trio, a powerhouse trio, like Cream. But what he was doing wasn't like Cream. He was doing something I'd never heard the like of it. It was just it was like stream of consciousness, but it was held together by some kind of core. Anarchic free jazz, I suppose, but the way he plays guitar so fluidly, if you know it, is amazing. So obviously that, and he has a residency in some New York bar every Sunday, which I haven't been to, but I'd love to go. So yeah, I have that American influence. Johnny Cash hasn't really particularly been an influence on me. But I think the enigma of Johnny Cash as a character, as a person, that interests me more than his music. Actually, I actually find a lot of his music really dull, and it's quite difficult. So it's a bit like Leonard Cohen. You have to spend time with it, and then the real beauty of it comes out. You know, but it's not something you just put on in the car driving to pick up your daughter from school, because it just doesn't work. You have to sit down with it in a dark room, and you often have to be in quite a not a great mood, and then the real jewels of
music for different moods. It's really true. We're coming up to the end, Ross, so I think we might have we might have to reboot to just finish off, because the meeting's running out of time. It's only got a few minutes, so when it goes off, we'll just come back here and then we'll finish off. Yeah, everything to say.
Chicago blues, Texas, really important to me actually.
Yeah.
When I first played the guitar, and people like Otis Rush, you know.
Yeah, we'll reboot because it's all gone. Yeah, it's going to boot itself off. So then we'll talk about Texas blues and whatever.
Blues and whatever.
Yeah.
But
I don't have Pro, so it just doesn't go for long enough quite long enough. So we'll have to do it in 2 bashes. And when he says that, then the minute takes like forever. It says in 1 minute. You know, it seems to have been saying less than 1 minute for 5 minutes.
an English country mile, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah. If I reboot it, I'll just let it try and do it itself. It'll go.
But no, I mean,